that we need to be focusing on secure, seamless, and simple digital tools. People know that, and that's going to continue going forward.
Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group. Has GSA made the damn websites work? Administrator Robin Carnahan joins to discuss that and much more. It's Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for joining me. Here are today's top headlines. As Washington prepares for a new administration and a potentially dramatic reduction of the federal workforce, a new survey shows that the public is more satisfied now with U.S. government services than it's been in years. The American Customer Satisfaction Index study found that citizen satisfaction with federal government services ticked up by 2.2% in 2024 to a score of 69.7 out of 100, the highest mark the survey has tracked since 2017. Forrest Morgeson, Associate Professor of Marketing at Michigan State University and Director of Research Emeritus at the ACSI, said in a release that, quote, citizens are the happiest they've been with federal government services since 2017, and for good reason. The efficiency and ease of government processes and the ease of accessing and clarity of information to key satisfaction drivers improve year over year, and customer service remains high. The rise in citizen satisfaction with government services from 2023 to 2024 is part of the largest four-year gain, 9.9%, in the history of the survey, which began tracking that measure in 1999. The push for better government services was an early priority for the current administration, with President Joe Biden signing an executive order in December 2021 aimed at improving customer experiences and pledges to upgrade the designs of high-impact service provider websites. Last fall, the Office of Management and Budget delivered long-awaited guidance to agencies on how they should be implementing the 21st Century Integrated Digital Experience Act, a 2018 law to modernize and standardize government websites. In other news, over the last year, the Defense Department has reduced its civilian cyber vacancy rate to 16%, a decrease of 4.8% from last year, according to a top DoD official. Those efforts are part of the execution of the DoD's cyber workforce strategy and implementation plan. In a global fight to attract and keep cyber professionals, the Pentagon was facing a shortfall of 24% and has been looking to take bold action to change the tide. Officials have said the efforts undertaken since the strategy was unveiled in March 2023 and the implementation plan was released in August of that year have been working, but more effort is needed. Mark Gorak, Principal Director for Resources and Analysis within the Office of the Chief Information Officer in the Pentagon, told reporters during a call last week that the DoD still has a long way to go, acknowledging a 16% vacancy rate with military and civilian cyber personnel, which translates to a shortage of about 28,000 in the department. Gorak said the civilian vacancy rate was double what officials initially anticipated. To get where it is today, DoD had to hire an additional 14,000 civilians. It also turned over 6,000 civilians, he said. However, he painted those numbers as a, quote, good news story for the nation because those experts are turned over to support other efforts, such as in industry or elsewhere in the federal government. Gorak also said that in the past, the Pentagon has had to think differently about members of the workforce transferring out, but no longer should it be frowned upon for personnel to cycle out of the department to go to work for a contractor that could be supporting the DoD or a national security mission. Those personnel, Gorak said, are all essentially on the same team, and the key will be to maintain relationships with those cyber professionals and companies to facilitate greater transfer of skills. For more news at the intersection of the federal government and technology, visit fedscoop.com. Soon after Robin Carnahan was appointed and confirmed as Administrator of the General Services Administration, she made it one of her top priorities to, quote, make the damn websites work. By that, she meant it was GSA's role as the federal government's digital center of excellence to ensure that agencies were following through on the imperative to deliver modern digital services and experiences to the American public. Carnahan's time as GSA administrator will soon come to an end, with the shifting to another Trump administration come January. And with that, it begs the question, are the damn websites any better? I recently caught up with Administrator Carnahan at ACT-IX Imagination ELC conference in Hershey, Pennsylvania, to ask her just that, as well as how GSA plans to sustain progress ahead of an administration change, what the biggest obstacles are currently impeding digital transformation, and much more. Let's go now to that interview with GSA Administrator Robin Carnahan. Thank you for being here at ACT-IX and joining me this morning. Really looking forward to catching up and hearing about really all the progress that GSA has made during this administration. Obviously, the administration is coming to a close, so I think it's a good time to talk about that and sort of, especially in the tech space, some of the advancements there. So let's start, from your perspective, you've been the administrator the entirety of the Biden-Harris administration at GSA. What are some of those accomplishments that you've seen GSA really be successful in and that you're most proud of over the past couple of years?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, we came in very focused on a simple idea, and that is that it ought to be easy to use government digital services. My shorthand was always make the damn websites work. And it wasn't about websites. It was about how do you build trust and deliver for people when they need it. So I'm proud of the work that's been done on that front. If you think about places where we've added, made it easy to interact with government, think about login.gov. Think about IRS Direct File. Both of those things are great examples of how people at a time of need are able to interact with government in ways that are easier. I love the story about with Direct File in particular. 9 hours on average people use to file their federal taxes. $150 on average. If you think about that, on average, 63% of the sort of paperwork burden that people have with the federal government, 63% is with filing taxes. And to be able to make that better is a huge win. There's a story about a school teacher in California who was in the pilot. It took her 15 minutes to file her taxes from her house by herself, and was confident she got it done right. So that's the kind of thing that we need to do more of. So that is a really important step. But adding value to taxpayers, like giving them good value, is another thing that I'm really proud of that the team has done and that we've done across the administration. One way, of course, is the Tech Modernization Fund. You've heard me talk about that before. We have tons of examples of where that $1 billion that we've put in the last 7 years has gone to improve cybersecurity, customer experience, and shared services. One of my favorite stories is at the VA. We helped them stand up some programs there that helped homeless veterans be able to find benefits. So it's between the VA and the Department of Labor. That homeless veteran figured out that he was owed $3,000 a month and an $80,000 lump sum payment. That's life-changing. And that was able to be done by some of these investments to the TMF. And then the third thing I'm really proud of is that we're making it easier to do business with the government. We're trying to make it so our vendor partners can move more agilely and faster and quicker, cheaper to be able to do business with the government. FedRAMP is a big part of that and improving it. And so that's been a top priority. So, yeah, really proud of across the board a lot of the work we've done.
Yeah, so major progress, and I'm sure we'll dig in a little bit more to some of those. The TMF is one I wanted to take a bit further just because it has been successful. You mentioned the $1 billion that was injected into that fund, and sort of most of that has gone towards programs. You mentioned on stage that there's been a very high success rate, but there's been some struggles from the congressional side to support it. And so I'm curious, what's the next step to sustaining the TMF so that it's a long-term function of the federal government?
Well, I think members of Congress are increasingly seeing that this is a successful program. When you have folks who understand technology, who are making the decisions about where to invest, when you're able to make these investments outside of the normal budget cycle, because that's one of the big problems, right, that we see is technology advances happen quick and budget cycles don't always align with that. And so this is a way to be able to really keep up with the speed of need. And then to be able to prove out that the success rates are so dramatically different when you have an 80% success rate, which means on time, on budget, delivering what was needed, as opposed to the 13% success rate we know on major government IT projects. Like, that's profound. Yeah. So we want to continue to tell those stories, and I think as we do, people will understand that this is just a smart way to proceed when it comes to tech modernization.
You know, again, we're moving into a new administration. I'm curious how the progress will be continued. I mean, obviously, there's a good chance there will be a new set of people in, but what does that look like? How do we ensure that the progress that GSA and the federal government have made in this space are continued starting at January 20th, 2025?
Yeah, look, the new leadership are going to be at the agency and across the board, because it is a transition. But delivering good value doesn't go out of style, right? That is the thing everyone wants government to deliver what people need and do it cost effectively. You know, as you know, GSA turned 75 this year. Truman established GSA in 1949. The whole purpose was to make government work better for the people we serve and save money doing it. That is our mission today. That's going to continue tomorrow. It's going to continue next year. And so as long as we can show that we're adding value, I think it will continue.
You mentioned the 75 years, and I think it's a good point that, you know, the mission remains the same, but the sort of look and feel may have changed a bit, right. And now GSA is sort of seen as that tech, digital-first type of agency. And so I'm curious, how have you been mindful about that transformation, especially as topics like AI, cybersecurity, customer and digital experience have really taken a front and center role in the federal government? Yeah, look, again, you said it. The mission has not changed. It's still about how do we deliver good service to the people and save money. So when it comes to technology, there are lots of ways to do that. Shared services is an important part of that. Login.gov is an important shared service because everybody's got to sign on to get into a government system, and if you can have an easy single sign-on, that makes it a better experience for customers. One example of that happened in Maui after the wildfires, when people are trying to rebuild their lives. Last thing they want to do is just have a bunch of nonsense and hard steps to get into a government system, and so they use login.gov, and people were able to, just with that single sign-on, talk about unemployment benefits, get access to FEMA benefits, get access to Department of Labor unemployment benefits. That's really useful and impactful in people's lives. So that's an important part of what we need to keep doing going forward, is those kind of shared services. FedRAMP is a shared service as well. That's more government-facing, internal, but it is the gateway to getting cloud services available for agencies. And that means AI. That means all of the other things that we know that we need going forward to deliver good service. So we've talked a lot about, the accomplishments, the progress. Surely that's not without, continued challenges in some spaces. I'm curious, are there certain ones that may stick out that as we get closer to the change in administration, are still, things that the next one will need to focus? Look, all of this is about how do you implement, right? So nothing's done with FedRAMP. We are in the process of building out that team, building out that roadmap, getting feedback from our industry partners. So that's going to be an ongoing thing. Also, we have spent a lot of time talking to Congress about updating procurement rules, particularly when it comes to technology, because the old rules have been in place 40, 50 years. Back in the day when you were leafing through paper catalogs to pick things out if you're a procurement officer. That obviously is not the way things work anymore. At that time, it probably made sense in many cases to pick the cheapest item to get. But today we know there are other ways, particularly in technology, because there's a long tail to whatever you buy when it comes to cost, to think about best value. And so that's the approach that we're pushing. Good news is that idea passed unanimously out of our committee in the House in September. So we're really anxious and hopeful that we can maybe make some progress on that. So if not this session, next session, because again, this is delivering better value for people and better results. Yeah, I think the since the first time we've spoken, in this role, not a new role, but in this latest role that you've been in, you mentioned it in this conversation about fixing the damn websites, and you said it was sort of a metaphor for better user experience, better, digital delivery. But I'm curious, as we probably, this is one of the last times, or the last time we'll have an opportunity to speak in this fashion. Has that happened? Has there been a market improvement, given that was one of the, your trademark focuses since you've come into office?
Well, I think there are lots of examples of them working better. Direct file that I mentioned is one of those, and GSA's team helped with that. I think login.gov, that expanding to tens of millions of people being able to use it is an example of that. But there are lots of examples that we can use. There's lots more to do. I'm not claiming that it's all over, but I think that there is a new mentality, not just at GSA, but across the government, that we need to be focusing on secure, seamless, and simple digital tools. People know that. And that's going to continue going forward, and I'm really pleased to see that transition happen. So it's not just me that's talking about this. All across government, people committed to it.
Yeah, it seems like the momentum certainly has shifted. Final question, there's the clock's ticking. As we've talked about, the administration is coming to a close. Final priorities for you as GSA administrator?
Well, look, we're not slowing down on any of these projects. We have the pedal down and are going to continue. But look, the work on FedRAMP, I think, is just foundational for everything. The speed of change in technology is going to accelerate. It's not going to slow down. And if we're going to meet the American people's needs, we've got to get the latest technology. That means it's got to have a FedRAMP process that works better, faster, and cheaper for everybody involved. So that's something we're not going to slow down on, and that's something the next administration is going to need to focus on as well.
Administrator Carnahan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
For more of the latest on federal digital transformation, visit fedscoop.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thanks so much. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people to find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put the show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening.